Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us at this Your Overseas Home webinar. My name is Rosie. I'm a senior copywriter at Your Overseas Home. Today we'll be chatting with Chris Zachariou from Chase Buchanan about your financial considerations that you should think about when moving to Cyprus. It's great to have so many of you with us today, whether you're watching live or catching up on demand. Before you start your presentation, Chris, please could you introduce yourself and let us know what Chase Buchanan does?
Hi, yes, my name's Chris or Christopher. Chase Buchanan's a wealth management service out here in Cyprus and across the rest of Europe as well. You've probably seen from other webinars on Your Overseas Home. I'm based here in Cyprus, and Rosie did a great job pronouncing my second name. Not many people do it first time. Something we probably should have practiced, but no, you smashed it.
Amazing. I did actually think I was about to say it. I was like, I should have asked this.
No,
I'm glad I did it justice.
That was really good, yeah. And to everyone watching, get practicing because it's not just my surname that's difficult when you're out here as well. So it'll be good practice.
Yeah.
But yes, so today we'll be talking about tax, pensions, residency, all the kind of things you need to think about in terms of moving to Cyprus and planning to move in Cyprus, which is the key. And a little bit more about these in the slide. Not a lot, but a little bit.
Okay, fab. Thanks, Chris. So Chris has got a presentation to share with us today. Once we get to the end of it, we'll open up the floor to questions. Should you have any questions as we go along, just type them into your tab on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll get to them at the end. We do hope to answer as many of your queries as we can today, but if we don't have time to get around to them all, don't worry. We'll send all the questions across to Chris and his team at Chase Buchanan, and they will get back to you. So let's get started. Chris, over to you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the presentation. As you can see, the first slide was a bit about myself, Chris Zachariou. I'm a private wealth manager here at Chase Buchanan, and we deal with private wealth, predominantly financial planning, which is what everyone here is here to do, is plan ahead in terms of their move here to Cyprus. And a little bit more about me. I've got over 5 years experience in financial services, actually 8, but I think 4 or 5 had a better ring to it in terms of the way it looked on the screen. And I'm, as you can probably tell from my surname, of Cypriot descent. Both my parents moved to the UK before I was born, and I did the opposite and moved back here to Cyprus earlier this year. So hopefully I can give you a unique perspective, as it says there, on Cypriot culture as well as British culture, and be that go-to in between that you can talk to, not just about financial planning, but how to say good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, and all that kind of stuff. The first thing I'd like to talk about is a checklist. Now, you've all done the right thing here. You've come to a webinar such as this to really plan ahead and plan for the potential move. It's probably quite daunting. There's a lot of things online. There's a lot of misinformation online in terms of, as you probably see in the slides going forward, a lot of the rules changed this year, and it probably will change again next year. So keeping that up-to-date information online is a bit difficult. I know that firsthand for when I moved here, and the people I've spoken to as well. But hopefully we can clear things up. Speaking to a regulated financial advisor before you make the move to Cyprus is important for some of the reasons we'll pick up in this webinar. Taxation, in terms of residency, things you need to think about, and what kind of stuff you need to look out for before making the move and really consider, so you're best prepared. And an important note to remember, if you've got financial advisors or IFAs already in the UK, they are no longer able to advise EU, because of Brexit, they're no longer able to advise you once you become a residency of Cyprus. That's recently come up in one of my previous meetings this week. We had clients who took a recommendation from their advisor, their former advisor in the UK. They basically put it around the 5% withdrawal rule on offshore bond, not realising that's no longer relevant because they're living in Cyprus. Savings is taking withdrawals from investments and so on is classed as a return in savings. So there's no 5% rule. Everything's tax free in terms of the offshore bond. And basically, you need to look at the investments you have, pensions you have, the savings, and everything, and how that's going to change because of the change of lifestyle and residency. So the next slide, Cyprus wills. This is something that you'll need to definitely consider in terms of when you do move to Cyprus, especially when you're buying property over here in Cyprus. They operate with something called forced heirship, and that's especially important for those who have been in previous marriages. So if you've had relationships with previous marriages, and had children from those previous marriages, they will most likely go to the first children before your intended people. That may be the case that you want, but that's something to definitely plan ahead for. Have both a will in Cyprus and the UK, and then and that's something that should be made available for when you do purchase a property here in Cyprus. It should be a part in terms of setting up a Cyprus will, and if you don't have that, you've got our number at the end of the presentation, and you know where we are to put you in the right direction and hopefully help you with the estate planning after the fact. Personal income tax in Cyprus and how it may differ. An individual is a tax resident of Cyprus if they spend more than 183 days in Cyprus during one calendar year. In terms of tax, you're probably used to being in the UK, having the tax year being from April to April. Here in Cyprus, it's from January to December. A lot more simple, but not for those moving from the UK to Cyprus. So that's something you definitely need to consider. Being here more than 183 days automatically actions you as being a resident of Cyprus, and something that not a lot of people take into consideration or even talk about is the 60-day rule. So if you, especially, and this is very especially relevant to those who have property in the UK still, are looking to travel not just to Cyprus but to other parts of the world, if you are here for longer than 60 days and nowhere else for 183 days, you'll still be considered a tax resident here in Cyprus. So that's definitely something you'll need to look out for, and this is obviously very personal to the individual. So if you think that this is something that you could be in the bracket of, it'd be worth contacting us after the fact, or reaching out via email and really seeing if this could affect you or not. Cyprus personal tax rates, as you can see from the table here, tax rates are a little bit more favourable. The first 19,500 is nil tax, so that's completely tax-free, and then it goes up from there. 19,500 to 28,000 is 20%, and so on. So, for example, if you have an income of £30,000, the first 19,500 tax-free. The next 8,500 will be taxed at 20%, and then the remaining 2,000 will be at 25%. And a lot of people are probably aware of the foreign pension income tax, which is flat rate of 5%. So as you can see from the spreadsheet, 3,420 euros of that is an allowance. So anything above 3,420 euros can be taxed at the flat rate of 5%. However, and again, this is very individual to what situation you're in, what income you're expected to have. If there is a scenario where there may be a scenario, where it may be more favourable to not use the flat rate 5%. It is an option, and you can fill that out on your tax returns. And it might be favourable if you do the calculations beforehand. And I'm sure a lot of you are aware of what you're expected and what you are hoping to get. And we can quickly see what's best for you, whether or not it's using the tax rate or if it's using the flat rate of 5%. It completely depends on the individual and what they're expecting to receive. Changes to residents. I should say back on the previous slide as well, we will be more than happy to help anyone obtain their tax codes. It's fairly simple, but it's only simple for those who have done it. So anything that we can do to help point you in the right direction and explain the process be really worthwhile. And then also tax returns. They are all now in Greek. So it might be favourable to have someone who speaks Greek and English and reads Greek and English as well to help you with that as well. And I'll be more than happy to pick up the phone and talk you through it. So that's something we can definitely help with. This is what we talked about at the beginning of the webinar, changes. There's already been a couple of changes this year, probably more changes to come, and it's hard to really obtain that from the internet. I'm sure a lot of you have done that. I'm sure you've struggled through that. I know I have, and part of the reason why you're joining this webinar is to get some clarity. But as of the 1st of January 2023, there has been changes to the residency applications for third-party individuals. There are additional requirements now needed with residency application. And one thing I will say that's not on this slide, but definitely important, make sure that, and I'm sure you're all aware, make sure that your passport is at least 3 months in date at the time of the application, otherwise it will not be processed and it might delay certain aspects of what you're hoping to do. But some of the new requirements are an annual income of 24,000 euros. Now, in some cases, and specifically for the first residency application, having 24,000 euros in the bank may be acceptable. Usually is, but that's something that's more likely in the first application. And the second application, it might be a bit more difficult just to process it without having that income come in. But an annual income of 24,000 euros, a clear criminal record certificate from the country of origin or residence, so that's wherever you're based, whether that's the UK or Spain. Original medical exemption certificates for blood tests and so on, and then a chest X-ray to show you're clear from tuberculosis. So, and then those last two can be obtained here in Cyprus when you do first come out here as well. It's fairly simple and quite cheap as well. Why purchase a property in Cyprus? There's obviously a lot of subjective reasons to why you want to purchase a property in Cyprus, but some of the more objective reasons are it's relatively low cost of living, and I know Rosie will attest to this living in London. It's probably a lot less than a lot lower cost of living for sure in certain parts of the UK, and high quality of lifestyle. And I've been here for a few months and obviously been here most of my life in terms of back and forth, visiting family. There is a melting pot of different cultures. There's a lot of UK citizens, former UK expats. There is obviously the Cypriots who are very hospitable, Germans, all different types of people, and really nice high quality of lifestyle. Favourable policy to obtain permanent residency through acquisition of real estate. We'll talk about that in a couple of slides to come. And one of the top destinations for retirement, as you can probably tell from how many people are part of this webinar now, it's an amazing place. It's a tropical island at the end of the day, so it's one of the bigger reasons why people do retire here. And the tax levied for purchasing a immovable property is relatively low, and again, that'll be something we'll discuss in a slide coming forward. Capital gains tax in Cyprus is 20% and is payable on financial gains from sale of Cyprus property. One thing that's probably you're aware of capital gains tax back in the UK is slightly different. Well, it's not slightly, it's very different. Capital gains tax not just on property but also on investments, and what discussed previously. Any investments you have that you're taking income from or withdrawing money from is classed as a returns of savings. So, and here in Cyprus, the allowance for capital gains tax is 17,086 euros. In the UK, it's currently 7,500, and it's taxable at 40% after the fact. So, and here it's 20%. So, very good in comparison, and this will be in relation to your first property that you purchase. An allowance is made for transfer fees paid, inflation rate per year, and cost of additions made to the property. And gains from the sale of the property are exempt up to 85,000, just over 85,000 euros if the owner resides continuously for at least 5 years prior to the sale. So if you live here for longer than 5 years, then you'll be exempt for that. Annual property taxes and fees. Now, the first two are very similar to council tax in the UK. So local authority fees is about 85 euros to 500 euros, and municipality tax is around about 0.1% to 0.2%. And this is very dependent on where you're looking to purchase. Like, again, using UK as an example, your council tax in London will be a lot higher than the council tax in Barnsley. So that's something completely dependent to the person and where you're expecting to live. And sewage tax is a bit different as well, depending on where you wanted to purchase. There may not be a sewage tax for those who use. Basically, if you live in a village or just outside a city, there will not be any sewage tax. For example, my colleague Gillian, who's been on these webinars before, you probably know her well. She does not pay sewage tax, and me, who lives in the centre of Paphos, I do. So that's again that's important to know where you're going and what you're looking to purchase, and it's something you'll probably discuss when going through the process, and I'll definitely be able to help with that as well. Stamp duty in Cyprus is fairly explanatory from the table. As you can see, the purchaser is liable for a payment of stamp duty on the purchase price of the property at the following rates. So it's 0 to 5,000, 0%, and then so on, as you can see on the table. And again, very dependent on the property you're purchasing, but that's something that should be fairly simple when trying to plan ahead. Buying a property for residency, third country nationals from the 2nd of May 2023. This is a new rule that's come into place from the 2nd of May 2023. UK citizens are now classed as third country nationals following Brexit, and so this is quite a common list of things that need this is the clear criminal record and so on. It's quite common in terms of third country nationals, but you'll need to purchase a property at least 300,000 euros plus VAT. It must be a new build, and you need to prove that you have an income of 50,000 for the main applicant, and then additional payments for additional income, for any spouse or minor children under the age of 18 that you're expecting to bring as well. And obviously a clear criminal record certificate for the country of origin or residence, and certify that you do not intend to work in Cyprus, which you wouldn't want to. You want to be at the beach most of the days, and then drinking in the evenings, I'm sure. VAT is payable on property in Cyprus. It's 19% when buying a new property, except when a reduced rate starts. I'm losing my words. Sorry, it's 19% VAT payable when buying a new property. A reduced rate starting at 5% is applicable for purchases of new properties, subject to conditions being met. So, depending on what you're purchasing, it could be a 5% starting rate rather than the 19% VAT. The property must be a primary and permanent resident for the applicant for the next 10 years, and the applicant has not purchased another property at a reduced rate. So basically, you get that flat rate starting rate of 5% for one individual property and not a second. So that's only applicable for one. And it is really dependent on the size of the property. So when you are out here looking for different houses or apartments, and that garden looks amazing and big, you probably need somebody needs to take into consideration. So that's very individual to the person and what property you're looking to purchase. General health system here in Cyprus, it's very favourable. It's similar to the NHS back in the UK. It's very important to me when I moved. I'm type 1 diabetic, so it was one of the first things I needed to really get my head around. And patients have the option to select their healthcare from private to public healthcare sector, and contribution rates are as the table shows. So you can see for employees, those who are coming here to work, or employers, and then obviously pensioners, they're 2.65%, and that's something definitely to consider when moving over. I know a lot of you will be, this will be on top of the list for a lot of people. General health system contributions are capped at 180,000 annual income. So if you are having an income of more than 180,000, you won't be paying a percentage of that above 180. And I actually flew through that. I'm so sorry. But this is my contact details. It's a difficult name to spell, so I'll keep this page up for a while. And my mobile number, and then our office number as well as our website, so you can look for a second opinion.
Fab, thank you so much, Chris. So we have time for some questions now. If you have something that you'd like to ask Chris, feel free to just drop it in the tab. I do have a quick question on this slide. The top point, 19% VAT is payable when buying a property. Is that just for a new property, or is that resale as well?
That specifically is for a new property. In terms of resale, depending on the property, it might be a bit more wavering, but that's something, if you do have that specific question and you're not purchasing a new property, get in touch and I'll be more than happy to have a look at it with my colleague Jill and give you a more defined answer.
Okay, fab. All right, let me think my other questions. What other advice could you give regarding inheritance tax?
Plenty of advice. Definitely something you need to consider in any situation. You've built up a certain amount of wealth throughout your life. You've built up pensions and investments and savings, and you want to make sure that's protected. Whether or not it's to go to your children or your wife or your husband, or to even your cat, that's something you definitely need to take into consideration. Again, and I'm very sorry about this being the generic answer, it is individual to the person, and that's something that, if you do have these specific questions, again, give us a call. We'll be able to speak through anything that you may want to talk about. And your specific scenario, so if you have a pension here, if you have ISAs in the UK, how that will affect you is something you definitely should consider before moving. Okay,
cool. I imagine that if, let's say, I want to move to Cyprus and I want to work out there, that 24 grand minimum that you mentioned, is that for people who are retired as well?
Sorry, you echoed a bit there. Sorry, Rosie.
Don't worry. The 24,000 euros minimum requirement, is it the same for retirees as well?
Yes. So that's something that, just in terms of getting residency for the first application, that's 24,000 would need to be shown.
Okay. Mark's asking to relocate to Cyprus when retired. Sorry, could you just mute yourself while I'm talking? Is that okay?
Definitely.
Yeah, Mark's asking to relocate to Cyprus when retired. Do I need to buy a new property or can I purchase resale?
You can purchase a resale. That's something that's definitely applicable and something that may change a little bit in terms of some of the planning you need to consider, but should be fairly simple and again something that not only your real estate agent but ourselves will be able to help you with for sure.
Lovely. Craig's asking, he's been told that if you can prove you're not as, I think you mean if you can prove you're of Cyprus heritage as far back as your grandfather, you're tax-free for 17 years. Is this correct, or are there stipulations?
There is stipulations. This is something I consider. Obviously, both my parents are of Cypriot descent, so that's something. And then, depending on your age as well, there may be army service that you might have to consider as well. So if you are going down that route, again, very individual to the person, and something. There's a lot of different things you need to consider when you're applying through Cypriot descent.
Peter's asking, he has savings in an ISA and premium bonds. Would it be best to move them before he comes to Cyprus?
So once you're here in Cyprus, it'd be very difficult, next to impossible, to move it over, and that's mainly because you'd have to, unless you're willing to do it yourself, but your financial advisor in the UK will no longer be able to advise you or help you in that certain process. And then speaking with us as well, although we are FCA regulated, but post-Brexit, now we're based in Cyprus, we're no longer able to help with ISAs and so on. So we're CISEC registered as well. You'll see all the registrations on our website. So that might put you in a bit of a predicament, but that's something we can definitely discuss, and your options that you have before moving, and then once you do move as well.
Okay, fab. Mark's asking, is there a minimum purchase price on resale property as there is on new builds?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Jill, I think, is in the audience as well. She's probably screaming out the answer, but I'm not 100% sure. Let me take down his details and I will send him across an email or a message to confirm that.
No, that's great. Yeah, I think it does depend on if you're applying for a visa or anything like that. So it really does depend.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sure Chris will be in touch.
Yeah, definitely.
One more question. We've got Peter. He's renting first, but still working in the UK. He's, for instance, staying in Cyprus for 4 to 5 weeks, then flying out to the UK to work for a fortnight, then returning. Will I need citizenship, and will I be taxed in Cyprus as well as the UK?
So this is where the 30-day rule come into account. So if 60-day rule, sorry. So if you're here for more than 60 days and you're nowhere else for over 183 days, you will be classed as a Cyprus tax resident. So that's something definitely need to speak to someone like ourselves to just basically cover all corners and make sure you're not paying tax you don't need to, or getting into a confusing state.
Yeah, definitely plan that out.
Yeah.
I will say, I think it's the 90-day rule.
Oh my god, it probably is.
Don't worry.
Blacked out. Rosie, I blacked out at the beginning of this. I don't
Don't worry, you clocked off soon, so don't worry. Okay, so I think that's about all we've got time for today. Thanks, Chris. You've been great. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge. For everyone listening in, whether live or on demand, we strongly recommend you get in touch with Chase Buchanan to discuss your requirements in detail, as Chris mentioned. Before we finish, we would like to invite you to leave us a review on Trustpilot if you found this webinar useful. Thanks again, and happy property hunting. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Bye.